Forgot. Okay, yeah, you're live.
Whoa, Tanya.
Hi. Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? How do we know if people are here?
I don't know. I think maybe if people can just chat when they join so we can see them. Carol, you
Ta-da!
Yay!
Jerry Murphy. Hey, Queen.
Hi.
How are you?
How has your first month been, Carol? Let's idly chat while we wait for people.
The first month has been hectic.
Mm-hmm.
It's been informative. It has been eye-opening. It's going to be a heavy lift. Definitely going to be a heavy lift. But I am up for the challenge because of the people who are going to be chiming in tonight and the obstacles that we're up against. I think will pale in comparison to the power of the people. How's it been for you?
It's been a lot. I think one of the things, and I keep talking about this over and over, one of the things that's been a challenge is onboarding you and new staff while actually learning about city systems, learning about the legislative process, learning about how to participate in city council meetings, learning about how the city works, including rules around, benefits and all just that normal HR stuff. Yeah. All of that happening at the same time as trying to help you be a city council person has been difficult. And my wish, my life goal maybe, is to make sure that the next person who is elected and the staff that comes with them doesn't have that same experience.
Right.
Like the new person who's elected should be onboarded at least a month before you have to go to your next council meeting.
Yeah.
Because that way everything's taken care of and we're not all freaking out and stressed out about everything.
I think that would be amazing, Tanya. That would be a huge improvement to, what we're experiencing and beneficial for whomever is coming behind us. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the vision that leadership needs. I think it's been a challenge. It's been a real struggle. I mean, I think y'all were paid 3 times before I was paid once. Yeah. Because I'm not in the system or what I don't even know what was happening. But thankfully it's not about the pay, especially with how abysmal it is.
Yeah.
But, I just want to say, especially honoring your solar return that is upon us. You have been an amazing asset to just being able to make this process bearable. So I want you to know that. And I want to tell you happy birthday, even though I don't celebrate birthdays. Happy birthday, Tanya.
Oh my God. Okay. My life is bad. So let's get started. Oh, but before we get started, I just want to thank the community and ask everyone to be super patient with us as we are navigating onboarding. I know everyone wants to meet with us and everyone wants to talk with us. Just be, super patient as we, try to figure everything out. We want to meet with you and we want to talk with you too. So just keep that in mind. All right. So, Carroll, what's going on with public safety? We've been hearing a lot from the community about issues that are going on with public safety.
Well, I initially wanted to have this conversation with community because of the issues that we were hearing about. Number one, officers that were engaged in the attempted coup at the White House. the people who went to the Capitol who were OPD officers, and the other officers who were posting some horrid stuff on Facebook and Instagram in private groups. And so, there are a lot of folks in the community, and I hope the people who signed our survey and filled out our Google form were able to make it here tonight. And if not, this is just going to be one part of several conversations about these types of issues. And then it moved from, holding police accountable to being paid on taxpayer dimes for that type of activity, to there's a spike in crime and, there's no police response. And so as an office, we're getting a lot of constituent calls around what is going on in Oakland. And we're finding out just through investigation and some of the council meetings that people have been a part of, that there have been huge cuts to the budget. And what we learned yesterday with this press conference that happened in Chinatown with our council president, that the responsibility for these cuts is being blamed on Rebecca Kaplan, who is the vice mayor for the city of Oakland, and Nikki Bass, who is our council president. And I just wanted to bring all of these topics together so that we can talk about the overall public safety in our communities and really just listen to people and hear what they're going through, because it's impacting people's lives. But I also wanted to inject my philosophy about predators in our community. And I think it's really important that we lift up the conditions that exist, because those are the conditions that nurture or perpetuate a certain type of crime. And when I say crime, I want to be super explicit that what we see is criminal, robberies, burglaries, homicides, those are often secondary results of a primary predator. The primary predator that is in existence and has existence since the beginning of this industrialized capitalist nation that we live in, the primary predator that creates criminality is our capitalist system, white supremacy. It is the disinvestment in our communities. And until we address the primary predator, we will always have secondary predators that are going to steal your purse in a pandemic and take your money and hit you over the head because their primary needs haven't been met. And that's what I wanted to really highlight. And then we also, just because those primary conditions exist, doesn't mean we won't deal with the secondary predators. But we have to understand that the conditions that create those predators should be our number one issue. And that is why I'm an organizer, to deal with those primary conditions. That's why I'm a city council person, so I can deal with them from a different perspective. So I just wanted to put that out there, Tanya, and I'm done.
Thank you. What I want to do is also acknowledge to those who are watching, those who are our constituents, that we do hear you. We understand what some of the secondary conditions are happening. So we do hear that you have seen a work stoppage when it comes to cleaning up encampments. We hear you when you say that you've seen or had your car broken into or stolen, your catalytic converters have been taken from your car. We hear you when we've seen the stories about home break-ins. We hear you that there's a lot of sideshows happening. We hear all of that, and we just want to acknowledge that we are paying attention, that all this stuff is happening. At the same time, we want to explain to you why some of that is happening now. And we're going to talk about what's happening with the budget at the city and some of the cuts that have happened recently, as early as December of 2020, before Council Member 5 had been elected. And some of the decisions that were made, not by the city council, but by administration. So I'm going to share my screen. But Carroll, why don't you talk about what you've learned so far?
Well, I will say what the dominant narrative is around the city budget is that as a result of COVID, the city doesn't have enough money to make it through the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ends June 30th of 2021, and we have a 2-year budget cycle, so we're at the bottom of our 2-year budget cycle, and we'll be working on our next 2-year budget starting now. So, Tanya, if you want me to keep talking while you pull up, okay.
Go ahead.
So we are. We were told by our city administrator, his name is Ed Riskin, that if we didn't make some serious budget cuts because of this fiscal crisis, then we would be insolvent by the end of the year. And so I say that because that is the dominant narrative that is being carried in the media, but it's not completely true. It's not completely accurate. We're not in a budget crisis because of COVID per se. We're in a budget crisis because the police department overspent by $32 million in this last fiscal year. And that is critical because it's a subtle, but it is a very relevant difference, because they're saying we don't have money because of COVID. The police have something to do with that, but it's COVID. And the truth is, yes, our taxes are down. The fees that would have been able to cover up for the overspending are not coming in because of COVID impacts. But the overspending has always been an issue, and we've always covered it up because of a booming economy. And now that we don't have a booming economy, we're facing bankruptcy. So the crux of the issue is not necessarily COVID, because if we didn't have this overspending, we wouldn't have this budget deficit. So let's keep it real. We wouldn't be in the same situation. And so the fact that the narrative is different means someone is trying to get you to believe something that is not so true. The same thing with the fallacy that was being pushed yesterday in the press conference, that there's a tax on our Asian community in Chinatown because of the defund movement, the call to defund police departments that rose up out of the Breonna Taylor killings and the George Floyd murders, and the things that Oaklanders through the Anti-Police Terror Project have been working on for the last several years, that is the reason that there's been an increase in attacks on our Chinatown neighbors, is patently and just grossly false. Because how do you go? That's like, and it makes me think of all of the people that used to say, it's all lives matter. And, it's not about, we shouldn't just say that Black lives matter, because all lives matter. And Black Lives Matter is just this terrorist group. It's a term to make a point. Defund is a term. It's a concept. It doesn't mean you're going to take the police and put them in a trash today. I mean, a lot of the services that they are supposed to provide, the protect and serve, is not happening, and they don't serve a lot of our communities anyway. But just to say that the defund movement is causing crimes and attacks against our Asian neighbors is sickening. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share that piece.
Thank you, Carroll. So let me backtrack. So what you had mentioned before is that the city did, as a result of COVID, of course, did experience a lack of revenue due to closures from, restaurants or businesses. And the city recoups revenue because of taxes to those restaurants and those businesses. Now, as a result of that, what happened in December is that the city administration went to council and said that we need to hurry up and make $29 million in cuts from the budget in order to remain somewhat solvent through the end of the year. And so they presented a memo about what are some of the cuts that they were going to make immediately. And some of those immediate cuts happened with, a hiring freeze, release of temporary staff. So you may have heard from fellow residents who work for the city of Oakland temporarily that their jobs were cut. They also did pay reductions for staff not represented by a labor group. So those are city high-level ranking, city administrative department heads who got a cut, maybe a couple furlough days or etc. Those cuts were made. And then also there was some discretionary spending that was cut. And then finally they made 20 million in public safety reductions. Now, at the time when the council members received this report and made a vote on these cuts, they were not aware of what actual cuts were happening because the city administration said that he had unilateral power to manage the budget and manage what cuts were happening. So what actual cuts were made in the police department and fire department was not discussed at the time in December 2020. And so all the stuff that you are experiencing right now is feeling the effects of those cuts that were made in December 2020. So, and there wasn't a vote.
No, it wasn't a vote. It didn't come before the public. It never came. It was a memo that was internal to the city. But it wasn't with the support or the acknowledgement of the sitting city council members in December. It was something that had been done already. And so I think it's important. And I wasn't there. I wasn't there at the time, but we do have some special guests that are going to come on with us tonight and talk about their personal experience and what they actually know from that time. This was in December. I was trying to take a break before I got started on January 4th. So we're gonna hear from them about what actually happened in December.
So I just want to highlight some of the things that the administrator made cuts without approval from city council. Some of the stuff that we are seeing that you guys are, obviously concerned about. Area crime response, uptown walking, demonstrations and gatherings, which really hasn't happened a lot in the past month and a half. Lake Merritt Patrol, etc. Suspend schools programs.
I'm sorry, I just saw a troll in the comments, but it's okay.
Reducing traffic investigations, reducing ceasefire by 25%, suspending foot patrol in areas 1 and 2. All of the stuff that you guys are now seeing the effects of. So we'll hear more from Councilmember Kaplan and Councilmember Nikki Bass, who will also share their perspective on what has occurred.
Because this is my prediction, Tanya, and I don't know. I hope that I'm wrong. As a result of the ongoing trauma that has been experienced from communities of color, primarily Black folks in this country, around militarized policing, and the disinvestment in Black communities and brown communities and poor communities, it's created a certain type of neighborhood where folks sometimes engage in the underground economy to survive, right? And because these are the same communities that have been exceptionally hit during COVID, it's a mix of a bunch of things that are now out of control. But just like they want, a lot of police apologists want us to understand about the police department, it's usually just a handful of people that are doing really bad things that impact and just impact the entire system, impact the entire neighborhood, impact the community, right? So I want to be clear that we've got to address the secondary predators, but the reality that people are trying to create with this narrative that somehow it's Black folks that are attempting, that not are attempting, but Black folks that need to be brought to heel because of their racist attacks on Asian folks. Number one, there's a diverse group of people who've been identified in some of this fear mongering that the mainstream media is whipping up. And overall, Darwin Bongram has been doing an amazing job on Twitter, highlighting the fact that crime in Chinatown has actually gone down. And what I'm feeling is going to happen is that all of this fear mongering and all of this rhetoric that we heard in the press conference yesterday is to justify the call for more police, more than the $330 million that they already get. Not a better use of those funds, but more funds. I guarantee that is the direction that we're heading in. So it's imperative that we get the data, that we know the facts, and that we have a plan, and which is why I want to hear from community, because I want to be clear. I'm not a savior. I'm not coming to save anybody, but collectively we can come up with the plans and ideas that work best for our communities. And, first it starts by the correct analysis of the problem. And the correct analysis of the problem starts with the disinvestment of our communities in the first place.
Amen. I also want to give a shout out to blog post, Hyphenated Republic, who is also follow them on Twitter, him on Twitter. Also been following city council meetings and giving great analysis about what's happening. And so please feel free to follow him. Those were where the slides that I got came from that blog post. So please read that. So do we have any questions? We're going to have another speaker who will come and share with us about some of the issues of crime within his neighborhood. But is there any other questions in the chat that we need to address, or any other comments? Please feel free to type them.
What you're identifying now is occurring in municipalities across the country. Yeah, it is. So I think what James Birch is saying is that this situation is not unique to Oakland. And the police across the country are trying to justify their existence, basically. And and I said this with Davey D earlier on the radio, is that we've been told, and specifically my crew in Oakland, is that people should not protest, right? There's always been this, and it's used as a pejorative when people organize in Oakland. And I've noticed this over the last decade at least, is that, there's a better way to engage your city government. You need to go vote. If you vote, then you can make the change that you want to see in your communities. And then when we do vote, and you get the progressive representation from people like myself, then our authority is stripped away. And it feeds an apathy in the system of why people just don't check in at all, because there's no right way to contest white supremacy and capitalism. There is no right way, because as soon as you do it and you're effective, then they will change the game. And so we have to know that it's a game and we're all caught up in it, and figure out how we're going to turn over the board, how we're going to kick it over, how we're going to set it on fire, and not play by these rules, because as soon as we do, they change them. So there's a question: what is OPD's clearance rate for robberies? James Birch, you would be a better person to answer that. In 2019, the clearance rate was 6%. James Birch is the primary organizer amongst several organizers. I don't want to. He'd be mad at me if I said that. He is one of the leading researchers and organizers for the Justice Teams Network and the Anti-Police Terror Project, APTP, that's been pushing the defund movement in Oakland for the last several years. And he just let us know that the clearance rate for OPD robberies last year was 6%. And I think the overarching and the clearance rate for burglary was 2.2%. And I think what we're saying is, like, there are people who actually want the police to do what they're supposed to do, which is protect and serve, but they are not violence interrupters. They respond after something has already happened, after an incident has occurred.
And note that this was when OPD was fully budgeted. Their clearance rate was already low. Right. Fully budgeted, and like we have one of the highest OPD budgets across the country. And yet their response times, their clearance rates are low.
And he put in the link for the Crime Data Explorer there.
Yes.
But because there's this whole system built around policing in this country that includes the media, fear mongering, it includes our movie industry, our television industry, that keep telling us that the police actually do this thing for us and we need them. And then we live, sometimes if you live in neighborhoods like I live in, where there is stuff popping off all the time, then you want to be safe. You want to be okay. But we've got to understand also that crime is necessary to this system. It funds and fuels the prison industrial complex, which still provides this country with free labor, right? Which this country was built on. So it's necessary for some things to continue. I think we have another question from Charlie Darling. How do you see City Council playing a role in supporting communities through this? Maybe in ways it isn't doing now. I believe we're doing what we're doing. Number one, calling out the BS when we see it. And we need the public to join us in this, because one of the things I've called for is for the mayor to apologize to our council president, number one, for the disrespect, but number two, for misleading the public. Because if we don't operate with the right information, then we don't get to form the right analysis. So one of the things that we do is what we're doing right now, figuring out how do we reallocate this $330 million a year, or whatever the budget will be, into things that truly keep us safe. Housing, especially on the precipice of record evictions in the city of Oakland. How do we keep our protections for our vulnerable folks? How can we fund getting people off the streets in a rainy and cold winter? The things that weren't able to happen in a majority conservative city council, now we have the ability to get past. So Charlie, I think those are some of the things that we do. And then with me being an organizer, helping to organize the council around a new vision of what our society can be if we think past the boxes and the boundaries that we've been given. And the ways that you can help us through that is to amplify these messages. Don't let lies get told through social media, through Twitter and Facebook and social in all the different social spaces, right? That's how Trump was created. The media allowed him to build this platform of lies. That's happening right here. And we've got to call it out. We got to stop it. And we're going to hear from some more folks. I hope one of our guests is here to talk about a little bit about his experiences and how they're organizing in their part of my district. So I don't know if Seneca's ready to become a panelist, but I welcome Seneca Scott, got the Town Biz shirt on, representing. So I'm gonna dip out and let Seneca talk for a little bit. But I'll be back to join the conversation.
Hi, Seneca.
My volume on. We're working. And how long do I have?
10 minutes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your neighborhood, in your community, and what you're seeing?
Okay. I don't want to repeat anything Carol's mentioned already. I think we all know that increasing poverty leads to increasing violence. But I do want to dive a little deeper about to contextualize that a little bit more. I think that is new for a lot of people, whether they understand it conceptually or not, to actually experience levels of violence that are happening right now, which many people who have been here for a while say are equal or greater than crack era. We need to talk about that a little bit so people can understand it. Mm-hmm. So I'll start with saying that the root word of infantry is infant, right? We had this year the youngest armed robber in Oakland with an 11-year-old child took a gun and robbed somebody. That's ridiculous, right? That does not happen without the scene being set and the stage, you know, and the lights on and everything that we need to amplify this level of desperation that will have children taking that sort of risk. So I think that one thing, and I'm going to talk about children a lot right now because I think that's the most important thing, a message that I want to get across that I think is missing. I don't hear it being spoken about enough. Mm-hmm. Children can learn languages. The average one can learn, I don't know, 4 or 5 languages. They're hella smart. We all know this, right? And once you get like 22, whatever, you can't do that no more. There is a sweet spot where you're going to speak the language, and children speak the language of the now and the future, and that language is an economic collapse, and we're witnessing it, right? And if you've ever been to Brazil, if you've ever been to places where you can resort and do your thing over here and live all rich and whatever, and ignore what's going on in the favelas, and then you want to go and peek your head in the real world and you see what real life is about. And that's what Oakland is fastly turning into, because we are collapsing. We're collapsing because we don't manage our budget correctly. We're collapsing because we're not acknowledging the root cause of these issues, being white supremacy, being capitalism, being extreme levels of economic disparity. We know that economic disparity leads to violence and economic collapse, but yet we repeat this insanity over and over again. So I think that we need to really focus on these children right now. They need us. They have no hope. I'm not saying no hope. Let me not be too dramatic. All right. But they're having increasing levels of less hope because their parents and the people who are raising them, us, we have less hope. And we're going through all of the things that have to do with a pandemic and ensuing economic collapse. Just a bizarre world where Wall Street says it's the best economy ever, and everybody that we know who's not wealthy is desperate or unemployment or has food stamps or it's just crazy out here. You know, and the only hope that we're going to get is from ourselves. I think that the solution right now really needs to be focused on getting some money to get some programs for the children, to really let them know that they have options. Like and to call it out like we see it. Why is there a gang? Where the OGs at? Why is there a gang war going on right now in West Oakland? What is really going on right now where there's nightly shootings? It's crazy. This ain't no random, like, they're not robbing people. It be a rainstorm. It be howling and raining and houses just getting shot up. Okay? This is more than what it looked like. Like, there's an actual war going on, and we need to get to the bottom of. We need to talk to these OGs. Where's Marshawn? Where is Fab? Where's Carroll? Get on the horn with these people. I know you know these people. You know what I'm saying? Get out there and get the OGs together and figure out what the violence is about. Because we started this in the early 90s when we had a war between the old and the youth in Oakland. And there was a reason behind it, and we were able to squash it at a community level. Not we, because I wasn't here. I'm new business. But they squashed it here in an organic way in the community. So I want to stress that we need to have an organic community response, that we know these children. We know who these children are who are taking up arms on a nightly basis against each other. We need to figure out how to talk to them. So that's my rant. I know you want to talk over here. You ready for it?
I did have one specific question. So you were saying you believe that we need an organic community response. So what are some of your suggestions on how the community can get together to help create safety within their communities?
First, we need to figure out, like, who are the kids, who are these children and young men and women, actually, too. Let me not leave the women out, because we had a crew of armed carjacking women now who are taking cars by gun force, right, in the bottom. Who are these kids, right? Not to out them and arrest them, like, not who are they, like, did you do the crime? Like, who are these groups of kids who fit the profile that we need to be like, yo, what kind of help can we provide you, right? Like, are you hungry? Right? Like, what is going on right now? Is your parent absentee? Is your parent, like, the levels of mental despair right now? If your parent is going through a dark depression, think about that. And they don't have school, and everything's been thrown topsy-turvy. It's just, we have to figure out a place to put, like, I would say the very first thing that we can do immediately is to have a real call to action by our leaders here. People look up to our town. I got town-based shirt on for a reason. Mm-hmm. People look up to our town-based leaders. I don't hear any organized vocal platform from them to stop the violence. I'm not seeing that right now. Maybe because it's a pandemic and the way that we have to communicate is different, and being online is not as effective. But we have to figure out something to get people in cohesion and to talk about, like, this needs to stop. And they do respect Mr. Fab. They do respect Marshawn Lynch. They do respect, Carroll Fife. I know you out here. That's why I came today, because I respect you. They respect these people, right? So we got to get together and let them know, like, we are here for you. I don't see that being out there like that. But I know that we all have that intention, but we know the road to hell is paved with good intention. That quote and a lot of quotes come up now every day as we go through this crazy time.
There are lots of smaller organizations that do outreach to youth and do great work in the community. Are you aware of what those organizations are? Because we can shout them out now.
Yes, please do.
Provide support to them while we're here, and we can direct those who are watching to support them. So what are some of those organizations that you are aware of?
To be honest with you, I'm not. I live in the bottoms on 8th Street. There are a few people I see around that they wear like yellow shirts and they do the gang prevention, but they can't do the normal thing right now because of the pandemic and social distancing. So it provides some complexity to our normal response mechanism that we used to take when the violence would start to decline.
Yes. So there's, like, for example, one thing that the city normally sponsors fully is the ceasefire program, correct? Then we have community centers like the West Oakland Youth Center. We have places that people can go that the city can actually start supporting in a way that they haven't, like our local libraries. We have organizations like, someone commented, CRC. We have Homies Empowerment in the East. All of these different organizations that our community can lift up and support and volunteer and donate.
Can you post links for them? And I think a lot of people are posting chat, post links so people can direct whatever funds to them. I would not ignore the level of sophistication amongst the youth right now. As a person who is involved at deeper levels, right? Just let me tell you, if you're familiar with Grand Theft Auto, if you're familiar with Call of Duty, these kids grew up with these games. It provides a very high level of familiarity with weapons and all types of tactics and things. It's really scary. They don't care about the fucking library right now. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like seriously, like, we need to find out where's the violence. This violence is the very few select people who are doing this. And I know people out, these are our sons, these are our nephews. We need to have a bigger, like, more dramatic response than list. Like, where are these community places that are doing this right now?
There's organizations like Courage, Qurij. They can be found at www.courage.org. There's organizations like the Urban Peace Movement. They are also out in the community. There's Youth Empowerment Partnership. Lots of different ways that we are going to put together a list, and we can share that with those who are watching today and community. Did you have any final comments for us?
Yes. Patience, again, for people who are listening. It's been like not even like 40 days. I mean, when did Carroll get sworn in? The 6th of January. It's been like a month.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, people need to calm down and give her a chance to get used to what's going on and get acclimated. I do want to echo that. I want to juxtapose my extreme sense of urgency about the violence, because it is serious. People's lives are at risk, with a sense of calm and patience and support for all of those organizations that you name. Like, I'm not saying they're not putting in work, but like, it's a hard struggle. They all got to come together as one right now, and that's the job in itself for organizers. And I know that Carol's an organizer, and that's why we elected her. So I'm here to support her, and I hope everybody who's listening is out there to put in work as well.
Thank you so much, Seneca. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us. So next, thank you everyone who are in the comments throwing out organizations and the names of great organizations. We appreciate you. And if you have more, feel free to add them to the chat. We will collect it and share this information. Hopefully we have our next guest, Council Member Rebecca Kaplan and Council Member Nikki Bass. Thank you so much, council members, for joining us today. I wanted to allow everyone to have an opportunity to hear from you, to hear your thoughts on what has happened this past week, on the surge and crime in our communities, and then also give you a chance to share what are some solutions that you are trying to put forth in the city council and how we can support you. But I want to backtrack a little bit. I know I was talking about some of the budget cuts and what had happened in December. And I want you guys to be able to share your perspective, because I might have gotten a little bit of it wrong. Again, I wasn't here, so please apologize. But please, yes, please share with us what happened and what is your response to what happened this week with our mayor. And I'll let Councilmember Kaplan go first. So feel free to start us off.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. And also thank you to Councilmember Carroll Fife as well, who I think is off screen just for the moment, but much appreciation and love to you as well as those who are on screen. Thank you for having me. And, I think it's incredibly important that we're talking now this week, because part of what's been missing from some of the public discourse is truth. Mm-hmm. And, there were some really awful things said in terms of the mistreatment of our council president, Councilmember Nikki Bass, how she was mistreated by the mayor at a public event in her district yesterday. And, I think there was obviously a lot of rudeness and hostility, but I want to specifically address the untruth, right? Mm-hmm. Because the rudeness and hostility is certainly an issue, but the lies need to be addressed. And there was a falsehood stated that it was Nikki Bass's fault, or Nikki and my fault, or Nikki and my and the council's fault, that those walking officers were removed from Chinatown. And that is completely false. The budget that the council passed, as well as the budget that I proposed, the budget that Councilmember Bass proposed, included those walking beat officers, those walking officers in Chinatown, and there's also in a few other places. And then the mayor and the administrator decided to cut them by themselves in December. Not only did the council not vote yes, it was never brought to council for a vote. This was a budget cut that was done in secret. And so even for those out there who don't support the walking beat officers, you should be appalled by budget cuts in secret, budget cuts without a public process, without a public meeting. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the walking beat officers is actually a pretty good thing, because then they build relationships, they talk to people, they walk around, they build rapport, but they were voted for in a public vote, and then they were taken away in secret by the mayor and the administrator, who then went to a community that was in a moment of pain and said, your pain is those other people's fault for something that they had done. And so, it's really unacceptable and inappropriate. And I also think it raises a bigger problem, which is the charter of the city of Oakland, which is the grand law of the city of Oakland, says that the budget has to be adopted in public at a noticed meeting of the council. So these cuts that the mayor and the administrator have been doing, both the ones they've been threatening to do and the ones they've already done, the cuts to the fire services, the cuts to the walking beat officers, the other cuts that they've threatened to make with layoffs of civilian workers who maintain things like our streets and our sidewalks, it's illegal. The fact that they're making these cuts without a public process. Now, I also disagree with the specifics of the cuts, but regardless of which thing they were trying to cut this way, there's a deeper question about their power to do these cuts in secret. And now the fact that the mayor's lying about it is just totally unacceptable.
Yes, thank you. Council President Bass, I know you talked a little bit with Councilmember Fife last night. Can you share a little bit more on, especially how are you feeling today? Because not only was the press conference yesterday covered by KTVU, it's also now being covered by CBS 5. And so what are some of the comments that you're getting as a result of this, action done by the mayor? And what are some of your thoughts and concerns about it?
So I did speak out about it last evening. I don't want to repeat myself for folks who tuned into my Facebook Live with Councilmember Fife last night. I'll just say, let's keep our eyes on the prize. Let's focus on the work that we need to do to meet the basic needs for our residents and actually help Oakland to be a thriving community where people have housing, jobs, healthcare, good schools, streets and sidewalks that are safe. There's so much that we need to focus on. And, I said last night when I was talking with Councilmember Fife, I came into this work to serve the people, and to be faced with that type of petty politics. It's not what I'm interested in focusing on. And it's also just a reminder that the mainstream media, they love to focus on those type of issues because they're not the core of what we do as elected officials, not the core of what we do as organizers or advocates. And so, I obviously, denounce what happened because I saw it as white supremacy and racism. I also believe that women of color in particular need to stand up, and there's more of us who are elected. And the reason we are having to keep receipts and tell the truth is because because we're building power, misinformation is one of the tools that is used against us. But I want us to make sure that we are focusing on the job at hand, and that job is serving Oaklanders, making sure that Oakland has the resources and the services that it needs. And there's so much more that we can do as a city and a city council. And that's why I am so proud to partner not only with Vice Mayor Kaplan, but also with Councilmember Fife and President Pro Tempore Sheng Tao.
Thank you. So what are some of the things that you guys are interested in introducing in the coming weeks or months that, our community should be on the lookout for, and how they can help support you in those?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because I do think that's really important, that when we fight these fights, it's really important that we do them together and with a lot of solidarity. And so in terms of some of the very immediate things that have been brought up about how do we ensure community safety in a way that's respectful and a way that doesn't perpetuate all the negativity and white supremacy. And so one super specific thing that folks have asked for is support for safety ambassadors. So safety ambassadors is when communities hire civilian community members to do safety patrols, community outreach, intervene to help keep the peace, often in community neighborhood business districts. And so that's one of the things that has come out of these conversations that we've been having, not only with Chinatown leadership, but other community areas such as Eastlake and other parts of Oakland. And so that is one of the things that I'm planning to move on immediately to work to support those efforts. Those were part of the budget proposal from Councilmember Boss and myself last year. And clearly this current situation shows how desperately that's needed. So that's one short-term thing. Something else that's coming that's maybe medium term, but I did want to share with people, because if folks want to be involved with this effort, I want to give you an opportunity to contact us and weigh in, which is, I think this whole situation has highlighted the need for us to protect our public safety resources and our public safety allocations. And the strongest, most legally binding way to do that is with a ballot measure. And so there have been community conversations already begun about revising Measure Z, which is our public safety funding ballot measure, as well as these more recent conversations about preventing cuts to fire stations, about preventing the redeployment of the walking neighborhood officers, and about providing things like civilian mental health response, like community-based help phone lines where people can call to speak to a counselor that isn't through a police department. And so by taking the opportunity now to revise Measure Z, we could lock in those protections and fund those other services that the current version doesn't fund, so that we're really making sure we're providing proactive safety that protects our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Bass, same question. I think you're on mute. Right?
You would think after almost a year in COVID, I'd be used to when to unmute myself. So I'll touch base on the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. So this is a volunteer task force of 17 members. and we have been meeting since September, following our budget process last summer, following the call for Black Lives. And I'm very, very hopeful about this process because it's a very intentional process with a lot of participation. Beyond the 17 volunteers, there are literally hundreds of people participating in advisory groups. So that reimagining process, which I'm co-chairing, we will be bringing forward to the City Council at our next meeting on February 16th an update. So that's an opportunity for the council as well as the public to learn more, as well as share more of your opinions. And then by April, the task force will make recommendations to the council for our budget deliberations. And I want to be really clear that this process is about increasing safety. We know that safety is not equitable in our cities. If you make a phone call out in East Oakland because you hear a shot, for example, the time that you have to wait is really dangerously long. And so there are communities that need better service. And there are communities that are over-policed. It's a sort of tension between being over-policed and underserved. And that means we have to really look at the systemic issues of how we deliver public safety. So our overall goal is to improve safety so that people feel like they're safe, whether they're in their homes, at a park, or in a shopping, in a business district. And that is the recommendations coming forward. I'll just speak briefly, include things like safety ambassadors. I'm really excited about that because in Chinatown, we've had that program going in several forms for some time. And it's those relationships on the street, and someone walking you to your car at night, someone helping to pick up litter or reporting illegal dumping, and someone who knows the shop owners and the customers, as well as people going to the health clinic. So we'll be putting forward a number of recommendations to council that are looking at what are all the things that police are responding to that they should not be the ones to respond to because we have violent crime in our city. So that's, homelessness, mental health issues, noise complaints and quality of life issues, illegal parking. I mean, there's special events. There's so many things that we could be much more impactful with our budget about if we just focused our resources on the things that get to the root causes. And I also want to underscore what Carroll said earlier about addressing the primary concerns of people. If we as a city are able to focus on housing and jobs, for example, that would go a long way. And then I also just want to briefly mention that we should be focusing on a host of revenue measures. I'm so grateful that the Vice Mayor is looking at Measure Z. There's other revenue measures that we'll be talking about. There's also federal relief. So before we actually take steps to lay off our workers, let's be aggressive about lobbying a now Democratic government in DC to provide relief to cities. And then finally, let's look at the systemic issues Oakland has faced, like having a flat rate corporate tax. We can update that tax and make sure we recover from this pandemic and this recession over the long haul by taking those type of measures.
Great. So when we're thinking about how the community can participate in budget, can you give a kind of a brief overview about how the budget process works and where the community can plug in and share with you what their thoughts are on how the budget should be managed?
Well, I'll start this off. Last year, our Vice Mayor was the council president and led the budget process. This year, I will be leading that process. The thing that's important to me is community participation in our budget. And so we do a survey, and there were surveys sent to Oakland residents, and the council will be getting those survey results on budget priorities, perhaps this month, possibly in March. And then around the same time, the council will share our own priorities. So we'll be able to do that together with you. And the way that our city budgeting process works is that the mayor will propose her budget. We as a council will hear it. We will do town halls in each of our districts. And we'll do those by Zoom, of course, and really engage our constituents, our residents, to hear, what do you want to prioritize? What's really important to you in terms of the services the city delivers? And through that process, the council president will offer amendments to the mayor's budget, and we have to pass it by June 30th. And along the way, we'll have sort of a new step in that process, which is receiving recommendations from the Reimagining Task Force. And Tanya, I know that you are on I believe it's the Budget and Data Analysis Work Group. So thank you for volunteering on top of your work staffing Councilmember Fife.
Yes, I was a part of an advisory commission or advisory board on the Reimagine Task Force. And I just want to give a shout out to those who are on the advisory boards, because we are community members who volunteered our time to do that research, to ask questions, to come up and try to reimagine alternative solutions. And we're not getting paid. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to all those who are taking the time to make a difference in our community in this way. And not to mention those who are on the task force, but anyone that's on a board or a commission. These are really dedicated community members that are just giving of their time to make sure that Oakland is a great place to live for everyone. So just want to give a shout out to everyone who does that kind of work.
Tanya, on that tip, can I make a brief announcement?
Yeah.
So there is a board related to our budget. It's called the Budget Advisory Commission, and actually districts 2 and 3 have openings.
Yeah.
And so if you are interested in serving on our Budget Advisory Commission and you live in District 2 or 3, please reach out to us.
Yes. So for those who want to or interested in representing District 3, please reach out by writing to District 3, all one word, District, the number 3, at oaklandca.gov. And for you, Councilmember?
For me, reach out to my personal email, and my staff will help me make sure that we get your message. And it's nfbas@oaklandca.gov.
Thank you so much. Waiting for Councilmember Fife to come and join us. She is actually at a neighborhood council meeting right now. So I want to give you guys a chance to make some last remarks and to thank you so much for joining us.
So I did want to make sure that, we touch back on the underlying issues in terms of jobs and opportunity. I know I focused some of my comments on the more sort of immediate questions that have come up this week, but I want to reinforce the importance that we have to be building jobs. We have to be building economic opportunity. We have to be building access to health supports, and the other things that will help us build stronger ahead. And so a couple specifics on that I thought worth sharing. One, as you may have seen in the media, there's been a huge disparity in terms of who's been getting access to COVID vaccine, that the vaccines have gone primarily to the most privileged, overwhelmingly to white people and to those with a lot of money. And so we have been fighting for the federal and state government who decide where the vaccines go, to provide large-scale vaccination at the Oakland Coliseum with a priority to serve underserved communities. And we got their yes to that just this week. We got that approval. In fact, my God, I think it was yesterday, Nikki, but I think the whole world has had 500 events. Wednesday morning, that's what I was doing before the other thing was out at the Coliseum announcing that. So that's going to open February 16th. And that's an opportunity to bring more support into the community, but also really working to expand job opportunity, including with our plans for the future of the Coliseum site itself, but also throughout all that we do, making sure we're having local hire and quality jobs with the businesses, and making sure we're not blocking local businesses from succeeding with the impediments at our permit counter and planning and building, where so many people are getting backlogged. So fixing that, I believe, is also essential to a healthy recovery. And I'd be really excited to continue to work together on all of that. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great. Tanya, I can share maybe 2 quick things if there's time.
There's time.
I should have shared the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force website. It's oaklandca.gov/reimagine safety. So please check that out. It has all of the meeting information and some of the draft recommendations that we've been looking at recently. So it's very helpful if you want to plug in. And then I also just wanted to share that, boy, Tuesday at our council meeting just 2 days ago, we were able to
lifetimes ago.
Really exciting, which is that we were able to pass an Oakland hazard pay ordinance to support grocery workers at our largest stores like Safeway, Lucky, Target, Trader Joe's, Cardinals, Whole Foods. And so for the 2,000 Oakland workers who serve us as essential workers, you now have an extra $5 an hour effective this week. So I hope that makes a huge difference. I actually connected with someone who's a dear friend and learned that her nephew, who works at Safeway, just tested positive. And now his grandma has to be tested. So it's real. The dangers that people face as our essential workers with large numbers of people indoors is very real. So thank you, Vice Mayor Kaplan, for establishing more COVID testing. And now our grocery workers have a little bit more of a safety net.
Great. If you guys have time, I do want to address one of the questions that I've seen in the chat from Michael Joseph DeSouza, if I said his name correctly. He's saying that he's hearing from community that there needs to be immediate steps to ensure safety. So how can we do something that will help create safety in communities immediately, as well as work on systemic work and change?
Well, I would invite anyone and everyone to join us in calling the mayor and saying, don't make these unilateral cuts. It's really gross that she's saying, she's going to pick what she's going to cut and then say, see, this is what would happen if you reimagined. If we reimagined, we would have safety ambassadors. So, this is a completely inappropriate example and that it was not approved. So we are calling on, and the public is calling on, and you can join us in calling on the mayor and the administrator not to make these cuts, but also in the very immediate term, we're going to work to bring this item to council to deploy the safety ambassadors as well.
And I'll share, because District 2 and District 3 are neighbors. So I represent the Grand Lake shopping district on the other side of MacArthur and Lake Park. And one of the things that we've been doing is we have been organizing our merchants. So on Lakeshore, there is a Lakeshore Business Improvement District, but on Grand, the merchants have not been that organized yet. And so since last year, since before COVID, I've been supporting to bring the merchants together. And about a week ago, I believe it was, we did a merchant watch training. And we did that in partnership with our neighborhood services coordinator and one of the staff from OPD. And it was really an opportunity for the merchants to come together and say, what can we do to make sure that we're also eyes and ears, we're educating our customers, and we're doing all of the sort of environmental things that will help create safety in our neighborhoods. And I think we're also fortunate in Beat 14 that our community resource officer is reassigned both in district, and that crosses District 2 and 3. His name is Officer Gonzalez, and he actually walks our business district. So I know that Carroll is attending the NCPC meetings. Those are our Neighborhood Crime Prevention Council set up by Measure Z. And I really encourage people to participate, because through that structure, you can create 3 projects. And those projects, in partnership with our city and the multiple departments, can work on concrete safety issues.
Thank you so much. And
without public comment.
Yeah, it looks like somebody's trying to join. But while she's doing that, thank you so much, Vice Mayor Kaplan, Council President Bass, for joining us. While Carroll is trying to come back, I'm going to share my screen. Because I think it's so important what you just highlighted, that there's an opportunity for the community to engage and be participatory in keeping their community safe. And that's by finding out what are your neighborhood council groups, what are the, who is your police officer who in your neighborhood, and contact them and let them know and report to them incidences of crime and hold them accountable to serving your community. So I'm going to share my screen and talk and give you the information for area officers in West Oakland and the website to show people where you can find out information about your NCPC. Feel free to, Councilmember Bass, if you need to go, feel free to check out. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So one thing that I certainly believe in, if anyone knows me, I have been trying to be active in my community since around 2009. And it started off by just, watching city council meetings and live tweeting. And then all of a sudden I get a job working for an elected official at the state level. And now I'm working with Carroll Fife as she navigates being a city council person. And so part of that, being a really engaged citizen, is being in contact with those who are here, who are paid to help you and support you, that we are paying for with our tax dollars. And so we have the power to hold them accountable, and we should not shy away from doing that. So contact your local area police when you have a crime situation and you need help in addressing them. For West Oakland, that we have 2 area captains, Captain Bobby Hookfin who covers West Oakland and Chinatown, and this is his email address. We also have Captain Chris Bolton, who covers the Adams Point area, and his email address is here below. C. Bolton. If you can just guess, everyone's email address is their first initial and their last name. So if you just remember Bobby Hookfin, bhookfin at oaklandca.gov, that's how you get in contact with him. If you want to have conversations with the mayor and ask her questions about what some of the decisions she's making or make some comments, please contact her office at officeofthemayor@oaklandca.gov. If you have comments to our city administrator, please feel free to contact his office at city administrator's office at oaklandca.gov. And finally, when Councilmember Bass mentioned, please look up what your neighborhood council are, find out when they are meeting, join those meetings, and work together to create safety in your neighborhoods. And you can find your neighborhood council by going to this really long email address website, oaklandca.gov, topics, neighborhood council. And so that's where you can find out where your NCPC is, when they are meeting, and join those meetings. And as I mentioned, Councilmember Rice right now has just returned back from one of those neighborhood council meetings. So, Carroll.
Yes. Folks are upset. Folks are mad.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We're going to get through it. So you all solved all the problems. We got a plan. We're going to start working tomorrow. Can you summarize where we ended? What was shared by my council colleagues? Where did we end?
So one of the things that we talked about were some of the solutions that they are going to present via city council. Councilmember Kaplan talked about how she's interested in making sure that safety ambassadors are fully funded. And so that way, this is a way that we can seek help from the community without necessarily going to our police department. Another thing is she's looking at revenue generation, possibly revising Measure Z, which will allow us to fund other community service supports, and also to ensure that we're not cutting important safety net programs like their fire department. Councilmember Bass talked to us about the Reimagining task force, which is currently underway and doing some great work, and that a report on the status of the task force will be held on February 16th. And so I encourage everyone to go to the city council meeting, watch the city council meeting, and hear from our city administration on the progress of the Reimagining Task Force. And then finally, we answered a question about what are some immediate things that the community can do to not only, while we are looking at some of the root causes of the crimes, but looking at how can we as a community create safety now. And so Councilmember Bass and myself were talking to our audience and letting them know that they should definitely try to seek out what neighborhood community councils are in their district and learn and share with each other about some of the things that they're doing to keep each other safe. I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Anyone in the comments? I try to take good notes while being a good moderator. Good job. But Carroll, I would like to hear from you. There's some alternative solutions that you're looking into that you would like to explore. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Austin model and what that is?
Well, I actually have heard cursorily about the Austin model.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I'm the expert on it right now. But one of the things that I know from experience with the Oakland model is that over years, I've worked with a group of individuals who were responding to times very similar to this. It started actually in West Oakland, where some seniors were, walking to and from BART and were having problems and weren't finding themselves to be safe in their community. So a group of martial artists that I'm aware of started escorting people back and forth, and it created a sense of community safety because they were looking out for each other. And so I think that is something that that we need to do and that we can do, everyone can do, is to get to know your neighbors and knock on people's doors and let them know, like, we are looking out for each other here. And if something happens, then creates alerts on your own block if something is happening. I think it's imperative that we be creative in these times because, like I just said in my last community meeting, there is no Superman that's coming to save us. So we have to be creative. Are there people on your block that if there was a signal, if there was a horn, if there was an alert, that noise can be made, like everybody could, like, I don't know. I'm trying to be creative in these times too, but it's like, what would we do in emergency situations if we knew that we are all that we have? And so it's gonna call up the most creative and resilient parts of us to be safe, because the people that are in the positions of authority that are over the council, the executives of the city, are not doing what it takes to keep us safe, right? And so what are safety mechanisms that we can create in communities and in the places where we live? And those are the conversations that I want to have while we're on the path to reimagining and thinking through how we create a systems of safety that are not lethal to us in a lot of ways. So I want to talk about how do we create these community neighborhood watch models where we're looking out for each other. How we're and it goes beyond just like what we technically think of crime all the time, but it's just like, is the senior down the street from you eating? Do they have people checking in on them?
Do you even know you're a senior?
Do you know your neighbors?
Yeah,
it's an opportunity, especially in COVID where we're shut in. If you can't talk to someone, write a note, write a post-it and stick it on the door, leave a postcard, ring the doorbell and run, whatever you need to do to keep safe and to make sure that there's a level of social distance. But I think that's what keeps us isolated from each other. And COVID has really amplified it and made it a little worse. But I'm interested in talking with people in communities about what are ways that we can talk to each other? What are ways we can communicate and create our own systems while the city is, trying to get its stuff together? Because literally, I don't know if my council colleagues talked about it. Our authority is being stripped from us right before your eyes, but the blame is being laid at our feet. So number one, we have to hold the city administration accountable, and we have to hold the news media accountable for the fear mongering that they're doing. And we have to take it's our tax money. It's our tax dollars that are going to do whatever these folks are trying to do, where they hide money in slush funds and do all this stuff. And listen, I'm gonna tell everything I find out, everything I see, I'm telling. So you all have the information that you need to make informed decisions. And that's when I'm talking about it at City Council, you can back me up because you have that information. So that's one of the things I want to talk about is how do we create community safety, and how do we fund that?
And I think one of the things that's really exciting about you being at City Council is that not only are you willing to share your experience and some of the things that are happening at City Council, you want to still keep organizing community. You want to empower the community to protect themselves, because we protect ourselves, correct? And so one of the things I would like to do is I like to bring on someone that helped work on our campaign, Katie, to talk about this organizing project that you want to get started and how volunteers can support you in the work that you're doing, but also help organize community to help protect themselves. So is Katie available? Awesome. Katie. Yay. Hi, Katie.
Hey, y'all. Fancy meeting you in a box on a screen.
So can you tell us a little bit about how, past volunteers and even those who are new can help us, help Carroll, help each other in this time?
Totally. So the organizing that's continuing is basically what we talked about the entire campaign, right? Carroll, you were pretty clear from the beginning that the campaign was only as successful as it built the movement, right? And so we're doing the movement building work that you set out to do from the get-go. What it's called currently is C4C. Community for community is up for grabs, I hear, potentially, but TBD. But it's still the acronym C4C. And the idea is that we're taking the infrastructure that was in the campaign, door knocking, phone banking, that base building organizing, and taking it out of just the electoral politics sphere. So taking it out of just voting and electoral politics engagement, and building a model of base building neighborhood by neighborhood in District 3 to really build that people power and put the power back in the hands of the people, and then build a model to go out citywide. So, COVID is still ravaging our communities. And so we're having to do everything virtual. We were door knocking during the campaign, but it's not safe yet to go back out on the doors. So we're going to start with some phone banking. And folks can get plugged in by signing up to volunteer still on the website, carroll5.org/volunteer. The phone banking shifts are going to start in March. Mm-hmm. This month, February, is going to be focused on infrastructure building. So if you've signed up to volunteer, you're going to get a call starting Saturday. So please pick up the phone if it's a number you don't recognize. I know that we don't really do that anymore, but please do it. It's a call on Saturday. We're going to get you plugged in. And February is going to focus on re-engaging all the volunteers, making sure everyone's clear about what's next, and then also doing some fundraising. So we need money to keep this ship moving. I said ship, not shit, but I realized that it sounded like shit. So I just want to be clear. But we need money to keep it moving. Phone banking costs money. The systems that we use, database, we're trying to have really good data because that's something that we often don't have in the movement work. We don't have the ability to have this infrastructure. So we need support with some money. So that's what February is going to be focused on. Plus the calls to action that you made earlier today, Carroll, around reaching out and holding Libby accountable for the white supremacy bullshit that she pulled yesterday, pitting Black folks and Asian folks against each other, white folks in particular. We need to take responsibility for calling her out on that. So definitely email her, hit her up, ask her to apologize to Nikki and to Oakland's Black and Asian communities. There's her email address, phone number. Hit her up on Facebook, on Twitter, everywhere that we possibly can. Hit her up to apologize. And then we also put out a call earlier today for folks to reach out. And in terms of holding Libby accountable still, there's a hashtag that's going around, shame on Schaff. We want to get that rolling on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. I think it also matters if you do hashtags on Facebook.
Yeah, you can do a hashtag on Facebook and people can search on it.
Great. Awesome. So do that. Shame on Schaff for what she did yesterday, that stunt she pulled at the press conference in Chinatown. And then also, like you put up on your slide, Tanya, asking folks to reach out to and ask a question to OPD staff, to the chief, Mannheimer, to Captain Hookfin, to Captain Bolton, and basically put it in their lap. Like, hey, the city administrator is arbitrarily cutting funding for city services. So what are the solutions for what's happening in Oakland, and put it in their lap? Obviously, they're not going to come up with any, right? But the idea is that we want to let them know that we're watching. Because just like what's happening with the mayor and the city administrator making budget decisions behind closed doors, I think that we're all pretty familiar with most of this stuff being able to operate behind closed doors, really, that it's not that accessible to the public, which is why doing these live videos is so important and why your approach, Carroll, is so important. So we just want to make some noise and make sure that it's clear that it's not just you, Carroll, that it's a whole movement. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of ways for folks to get plugged in. If you want to stay active, this is the place. Sign up to volunteer, carrollfife.org/volunteer, and answer your phone if it's a number you don't know, starting Saturday.
Thank you. And that person on the other end may be Katie herself, and she is awesome. And then, so when you said bullshit, you said bullshit, not bullshit, right?
I don't remember. I actually did say bullshit at one point. I think it was a relationship to what Libby said. Yeah. But I meant ship as in like what we're building, you know, this thing that we're creating.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to curse, because I don't do it very often.
Hell yeah. I'm here for it, Tanya.
Yeah.
All right, Jill. Thanks for having me on.
So Carroll, this is the end. You have any final comments and any words that you would like to share in thanking the community and participating?
When I think about what is plaguing us right now, I always come back to individualism, isolation. It is through this our system of competition, of having to make sure that we're okay, where we lose our love and support for folks next to us. And I think it's something that eats away at us in a system that is inherently patriarchal, capitalist, and white supremacist. And I know this might sound, kooky coming from someone that's an elected official. I don't know. But I think it's one of the things that creates ill in our society. It creates inequity in our society. And the only way that we defeat it is through collectivism and working together and caring about each other and creating systems that actually do just that, which is take care of each other. And in this time of insecurity, and not just in terms of our physical safety, but our financial safety, our health safety, our education safety, our job security, in every way, we are finding that the safety net didn't exist if you look like me, or is fractured if you look like other folks. That the way that we get through this is deep, loving, and abiding collectivism. So we got to make sure that we're eating. We got to make sure that our systems of care are intact. And if they're not, then we got to create them. Mm-hmm. And we got to really just transform our own internal selves and how we see the world so that we can do that work externally and outside of ourselves. So I know that might sound like moonbeam or whatever, but I really believe that we will get through this if we do it together. And I'm calling out, not because I want to fight, because it honestly takes so much energy when you are fighting against something. But these systems have been created for us and we live inside of them. And so we got to tear them down so we can build something beautiful. And so that our children and whoever comes behind us have something that they don't have to fight for. So it's imperative that we do that work. And I think we're closer now than ever. But sometimes you got to destroy in order to build. And these systems do not mean us well. If it did, then there would be more of us that are well. So we got to be well.
Be well. Amazing. So just to sum up, everyone, and thanks so much for everyone that has joined us in the beginning and stuck with us. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all those who have supported this campaign and it continues to support us as we navigate what being a council member means. We want to continue to be as transparent as possible, and we will try to share with you periodically via Facebook Live, if you don't mind, me and Carroll team duo talking to you. It's great, but we want you guys to help participate, because government is nothing without your participation. And so I'm going to reiterate the call to action. What are we doing? We are contacting the mayor, letting her know that we do not appreciate the action that she did against Councilmember Bass and Councilmember Kaplan. We are contacting our city administrator and letting him know that we don't like the fact that he can make decisions behind closed doors, and that we want to see that to change. We are paying attention to city council meetings and commenting and letting our government know when we don't approve something that's happening and asking them to make changes that are necessary. We are contacting and finding out who our NCPCs are, who are community organizations, and who are our neighbors, knocking on the door and saying, hey, are you okay? How can we help you? How can we help each other create safety, create community, so we can keep each other safe? And then finally, we're countering a narrative that is false and incorrect, and we're holding those who are creating these false narratives accountable. Whether it's CBS 5, whether it's Libby Shack, where it's some random person on Twitter, let's call them out and let them know that we are paying attention and we are not going to let you shape a narrative that is false and that creates disharmony in our community. Did I get it all right?
I think you got I think that's a lot. And I just want to add, we need researchers to do the work, because the reality is the mayor has brought in a lot of money to the city of Oakland, but it goes to different projects. It goes to different organizations. And we need people to look into that. We need people to look into, like Scott Morris is doing, the uptick in Reddit users and internet trolls who are spreading anti-Black propaganda by regurgitating violent videos over and over again as a racist dog whistle to get more militarized and aggressive policing to target Black people. And then we also need to create the safety systems. And we're going to be coming back to you all and having these conversations every other week to talk about what are we creating, because we're in a time of creation to keep our communities and our neighbors safe. Not just Asian folks, not just Black folks, but how do we keep our entire community safe? We're going to build that out. And then we're going to do the internal work with myself and my council colleagues that are really fighting for a progressive Oakland, to create the systems internally that do exactly what we need them to do. So just stay tuned and stay alert and stay vigilant and stay loving, because it's easy to get hard in systems and in times that are challenging. So stay open and stay caring, because that's going to get us through.
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember 5. We're going to end. It's 8:00. I need to make dinner. Guess what I'm having for dinner?
Brussels sprouts.
Right. Thank you so much. Thanks to all those who are following. We appreciate you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.